Okay, we have the privilege of studying Parsha's Vayishlach. Again, page 177 in the Steinsaltz, page 170 in the Art Scroll. And I want to discuss two central questions among many that emerge from the first episode in Parsha's Vayishlach, the dramatic reunion of Yaakov and Esav. Yaakov has been away some 20 years. He fled from Esav, who bore deep hatred in him for capturing not only the Bechorah, the birthright, but the brachos, the blessings from Yitzchak as well. And so Yaakov is forced to flee. Yaakov becomes a great family and becomes very affluent in the house of Lavan, and now he's returning home. And there's a certain inevitability to this encounter. Yaakov doesn't say, "Oh, I'm going home. I need to think about encountering Esav. I really need to go make up with him. I need to go talk to him. I need, we are not privy to what's in the mind of Yaakov. It just seems inevitable as the story continues and Yaakov returns. He sends messengers, malachim, messengers. He sends them to Esav. And the two questions that I want to discuss, one of them I've discussed on a number of occasions, so you'll bear with me as I return to it once again. But my question, what's always intrigued me about this story, is why does Esav reconcile with Yaakov? Right? The Torah doesn't tell us. The Torah doesn't say, Esav, the Torah doesn't put words into Esav's mouth that says, "Oh, let's let bygones be bygones." Esav doesn't give an explanation for his literal embracing of Yaakov, when the last we heard from Esav, more or less, is that he bears deep hatred and that his parents will be sitting Shiva for Yaakov. Right? That was the last thing we heard from Esav. And all of a sudden he embraces him. And to me, I've always been intrigued by this question of what is it for Esav? Why? And part of that question is, why doesn't the Torah tell us? Right? The Torah is silent on what is what's in Esav's heart. We have to assume it. We can certainly just take it pashup shot that he's okay now, but why? The Torah doesn't tell us. That's one central question. And the other central question, one of the central questions of the commentaries that I'd like to address today, is, why was Yaakov afraid? Why was Yaakov afraid of Esav? There are some very straightforward answers to that question, but there's a way to deepen that question by asking, if Hashem had promised Yaakov protection, if Hashem had promised that no harm would befall Yaakov, then why should he be afraid? This is a question that already occupies Chazal, already occupies the rabbis and the commentaries. And of course, I think addressing this question together with the first question, I think that the two answers are linked, or we can link some of our approaches to these two questions. But returning again to the first question of why does Esav reconcile? So let's just take a look at the verses for a moment, right? It's the beginning of Perek Lamed Gimel when they finally unite. It's found on page 183 in the Steinsaltz, and page 176 in the Art Scroll. So if you take a look, Perek Lamed Gimel, Pasuk Aleph, this is right after, Yaakov fights with the angel, that mysterious encounter in the middle of this story. It says, Vayisa Yaakov einav, vayar v'nei Esav ba. Right, so Yaakov lifts his eyes and he sees that Esav is coming. V'imo arba meos ish, and with him are the 400 men. These 400 men, we already know about them. Right, the messengers that Yaakov sent at the beginning already reported that there were 400 men with Esav, and so Yaakov sees that they're coming. Vayachas es hayeladim alayav al Rachel v'al shtei hashvachos, and he divides up the children among the wives. Vayasem es hashvachos ves yaldehen rishona. Right, he puts the shvachos and their children first. Ves Leah viladeh hachoranim. Right, Leah and her children after that. Ves Rachel ves Yosef hachoranim, and Rachel and Yosef behind that. Don't know if that was an awkward moment for everybody. That's another discussion. V'hu avar lifnehem, and then Yaakov goes in front of them. Vayishtachu arza sheva pamim ad gishto ad achiv, and he bows down 7 times until he gets to his brother. Vayisares einav vayaretz hanoshim. I'm sorry, I skipped the pasuk. I'm sorry. Vayaretz Esav likroso. Esav runs to greet him. Right, running always conveys a sense of eagerness. Right. Vayichabkehu, and he embraces him. Vayipol atzal varav, and he falls on his neck. Vayishakehu, and he kisses him. Vayivku, and he cries. He cries. Vayisares einav, and he lifts up his eyes. Vayaras hanoshim v'sayoladim vayomer mi'elelach. Who are these? Vayomer hayoladim asher chanan elokim es avdecha. Right, these are the children that Hashem has graciously granted me. And then he goes on and he continues to introduce everybody. Now, again, we if we just read Esav's actions, this appears to be a sincere reconciliation. But the Torah only presents us with Esav's actions. The Torah does not present us with Esav's reasons, which to me, again, I know I'm repeating myself, is so intriguing because we know exactly why Esav is angry. We know exactly the history between Yaakov and Esav. It's the central issue of this story. Yaakov capturing the Bechorah and the brachos. And Esav declares, Vayakaveni zeh pa'amayim, right? Esav declares why he's angry. He's angry because Yaakov tricked him twice. Try saying that 10 times fast. Tricked him twice. Maybe not so hard. So Esav is very articulate. He's articulate about why he's angry. And then fast forward 20 years, he's fine. You know, they say time heals all wounds. Is it just the passage of time? We don't know. The Torah does not tell us, and I've always been intrigued by this question. We know that there are dots over the word Vayishakehu, and that really all of this was just a show. That Chazal believe that really Esav tried to bite his neck. Esav tried to kill him at that very moment. And he wasn't able to, and so Esav clearly learns that Yaakov was protected by Hashem. That's one midrashic approach. But what is the Torah telling us? And not only that, but one thing I was sensitized to this year, looking over the Parsha, is how much suspense is built up over this story. And what I mean by that is when the Parsha begins, if you go back to the beginning of the Parsha, 170 in the Art Scroll, 177 in the Steinsaltz, so the Torah, whether intentionally or not, I'm sure everything's intentional, but in good literary style, builds a lot of suspense. Why? Because Yaakov sends messengers. He arms these messengers with a message, right? He tells them what to say to Esav, and the messengers come back and they say Esav's coming. He's got 400 men with them, but they don't come back with a message back. Right? If they delivered to Esav what Yaakov had them say, if they deliver the message, one would think that Esav would reply. Esav says, "Oh, I'm eager to see you," or I'm glad you're coming. Right? No message, radio silence. The only thing the messengers come back with is Esav's coming with 400 men. So, obviously that's why Yaakov was afraid. And we'll get to that second question. Why was Yaakov afraid? We'll get to that in a moment. But look how the Torah builds the suspense. Yaakov sends a message. No message comes back. Instead, just an image. an image of Esav the warrior with 400 men. That's subject to interpretation, but very easily interpreted. It's not Esav coming with his wives and kids for a family reunion. It's 400 men. And then it continues. And then it says that Yaakov is afraid. Vayira Yaakov ma'od vayetzer lo. He's afraid. He's terrified, and he starts preparations. And he divides up his camp, and he prays to Hashem. Right? We know that Chazal comment on the different ways in which Yaakov prepared for Esav, and then so we see all of these preparations. Yaakov gives them, further messages to say when these gifts are laid out for Esav, and he passes by them. And then Yaakov has the whole encounter with the angel, which is very mysterious, which clearly comes in the context of the story for a reason. Maybe it's Saro shel Esav, but here you have this silence, with this impending doom, right? The fact that we hear nothing from Esav, and he's coming closer, and then finally he runs towards Yaakov, but we don't know if he saw the gifts, right? I'm sorry, we do know, right? Because Yaakov then says, "Please accept these gifts." Esav says, "No, I don't need them," and Yaakov says, "I want you to take them," and Esav agrees to take them. But in terms of arraying all those gifts and having Esav see them, we don't know, right? We don't know. Again, the messengers were told to say something to Esav when he would pass by. We don't know if that happened, and we don't know what Esav said. We get nothing but silence, right? Remember when it says that Yaakov said, to the messengers, "Mincha hi shlucha la'adoni le'esav," right? This is a gift being sent to our master, to Esav. This is verse 18 in chapter 32, page 179 in the Steinsaltz. I imagine 172 in the Art Scroll, right? Vayitzav games hasheni, games hashlishi, games es kol ha'holchim achar yadim le'mor kadavar hazeh tzamrun le'esav mo'atzechem oso. Right? Yaakov commanded the second and the third and all of the messengers. This is what you should say to Esav when he passes by you and he sees all of these gifts that we've laid out. We have no idea if that conversation took place. So here, all these preparations are meant for Esav, right? Esav is he's the birthday boy here. He's getting all the presents, but we don't hear anything. We don't hear anything from him, and so I think that's in a very good way, in a very effective way, I should say. The Torah builds a certain suspense into not just the encounter, the ultimate encounter between Yaakov and Esav, but the reason why Esav reconciles. We don't get any reactions from Esav. We don't get any insight into his mind, what he's thinking, and so I'm intrigued. So if we were going to try to answer this question of why, try to understand why Esav reconciled, I think it would be useful to look at a little bit at what message Yaakov was really trying to send. If we read the words of Yaakov, and presumably this is what touched Esav, maybe, then let's take a look for a moment on what exactly Yaakov was saying. So if you go back to the beginning of the Parsha, 170 in the Art Scroll, 177 in the Steinsaltz, it says in the second pasuk of the Parsha, pasuk Daled, Vayitzavo sam lemor ko somru ladoni le'esav. Right. So Yaakov sends messengers and he says, "This is what you should say to my master, to Esav. Ko amar avdecha Yaakov. So says your servant Yaakov. Im Lavan garti. Right. I've lived with Lavan. Va'icharad ata. And I've tarried until now." Reading the translation in the Steinsaltz Chumash, I've tarried. Right. I've taken a long time. I've been there a long time. We know why he was there such a long time. 7 years and 7 years and 6 years. He was working for a long time. And Vayihili shor v'chamor, and I have oxen and donkey, sown, sheep, ve'eved, v'shivcha, and servants, ve'eshlecha lahagil ladoni limtso chen be'inecha. And I am sent, I the messenger am sent to tell this to your master, to you, Esav, limtso chen be'inecha, to find favor in your eyes. So at a very simple level, the ultimate goal here is limtso chen be'inecha, to find favor in Esav's eyes, to reconcile with him. But how? So what does Yaakov say? Yaakov gives him a little bit of a history, something he presumably knew, but he gives him a history nonetheless. Im Lavan garti v'acharet ad ata. I've been with Lavan, and I've been there a while. And the commentaries develop this idea. What does it mean, Im Lavan garti? Im Lavan garti could mean, I was not on my own. I was not independent. I had to deal with a foe. It was not easy for me. And that's why I've been away so long. I've been away so long because I had to work very hard for everything I have. Perhaps what Yaakov was trying to signal to Esav is that whatever you think the brachos are about, whatever you think the blessings are about, you wouldn't consider these blessings. I wouldn't consider these the blessings. You have nothing to worry about in terms of me taking the brachos, because clearly I am not benefiting from these brachos. That's the approach that Rashi takes, and I'm just going to quote a little bit from Rashi. I'll read it in English and then and in Hebrew as well. In Pasuk Hey, in verse 5, Rashi says, "Garti lo naasesi sar v'chashuv elager." I was not made into any sort of prominent person, or a person with an official title, a sar, an officer or a prince, v'chashuv, somebody of importance. Elager, I was a stranger. I was someone living off of others. Eincha kedai lisno osi. This is Rashi quoting the Tanchuma, right? It's not worth hating me. Al birkas avicha, over the blessing of our father, of your father, sheberchani hevei gevir la'achecha, right? When he blessed me that you will be a gevir la'achecha, you will dominate your brethren. Sheilonis kaimabi, it hasn't been fulfilled, right? I was not the gevir, right? The bracha said you will be a gevir. I was not a gevir. I was not the dominant one. I was a subordinate. I was not an official. I was a subordinate. Rashi says in the next Dibur Maschil on Pasuk Vav, verse 6, Vayihili shor v'chamor, right? Which sounds like brachos to me, right? He has a lot of property, lots of animals. Animals are valuable property. Nevertheless, Rashi says, again quoting the Tanchuma, Abba amar li mitala shamayim u'mishmanei haaretz, right? The bracha that I got from Yitzchak was from the dew of the heavens and the fats of the land. Zu but look at my possessions. I don't have anything like that. I don't have the real, valuable things. I don't have land, and I don't have the bounty that comes from the land. I'm like a nomad. All I have are animals, and so that part of the bracha wasn't fulfilled. So this is Rashi's approach. Rashi says that what Yaakov was trying to say is that the brachos were not fulfilled with me. The Ramban, who argues with Rashi, takes a little bit of a different approach, and I'm just going to quote just a little bit from the Ramban. The Ramban says that so the Ramban says that what Yaakov, the message that Yaakov was trying to send, wasn't necessarily specifically about possessions, but rather that the fact that he keeps referring to himself as Avdecha and referring to Esav as Adoni is to show that whatever dominance that is given over from the bracha that Yitzchak gave to me, clearly that has not been fulfilled. Right? I am still subordinate to you. You are the powerful. You are the official. You are the dominant one, and I am your servant. So that's the Ramban's point here. Here it is, right? Right, all the honor that Yaakov was giving to his brother with all of this deference, saying Adoni v'avdecha. Right, the younger is supposed to give honor and respect and accord to the older one, and here Yaakov is doing that, even though Yaakov, quote unquote, took the bechora and the bracha, and Esav hated him for that. Nevertheless, the Ramban writes, that mechira doesn't really mean anything. Yeah, I bought the birthright from you, I traded you, I tricked you, whatever it is, but at the end of the day, I'm still treating you like the bechor, and I am the younger son, and so therefore you don't have to hate me, because I still treat you like the bechor. So that's the message that Yaakov was trying to send, according to the Ramban. And these may have been enough for Esav to reconcile with Yaakov. He might have been touched. He might have been impressed by these kinds of messages. But still, it's remarkable to me that silence. What the Pasha Pshat, what the Torah presents us with, is a silent Esav. And not only is Esav silent, but ultimately the Torah is silent, right? Because whatever message Yaakov sent was returned with no message in return from Esav, and then they reconcile, then they embrace, and the Torah doesn't tell us why Esav embraces Yaakov. So again, all we get is silence. So again, I'm going to leave that question open. Why does Esav reconcile? And just go finally to the second question of why Yaakov was afraid. And in answering that question, I think we can answer the first question of why Esav reconciled. So it says very clearly that Yaakov was afraid. It seems like his fear is only really manifest once he knows that Esav is coming with 400 men, right? Because first it says that Yaakov sends messengers and he commands them to say such and such, and the messengers come back and silence. They don't say, all they know is that Esav is coming with 400 men. And then it says in Pasuk Zayin in verse 7, page 177 in the Steinsaltz, 170 in the Art Scroll, Vayira Yaakov ma'od vayetzer lo. Yaakov is very afraid, and he is terrified. That's one way. I mean, these are two words, that mean, that refer to fear in different ways. Steinsaltz translates it as he was very frightened and he was distressed. And so therefore he begins to prepare. And the question is, why is he afraid? Why is he afraid? Of course he's afraid. He's afraid of Esav. He's afraid of, the last time he was with Esav wanted to kill him. Nevertheless, the question is based on the fact that when Yaakov left Canaan for Haran and had the dream of the angels on the ladder and Hashem standing over him, Hashem says to him, excuse me, I will be with you and I'll protect you wherever you go. And I will return you to this land. I will not leave you. I will not abandon you until I have brought about what I have spoken to you, that I will make you into a great nation. So here, Yaakov leaves home armed with this promise from Hashem. He's got brachos from his father. He's got promises from Hashem. And Yaakov even responds with that neder. And I know that we can understand that neder in different ways, but still, this neder says, right? We know that Yaakov understands that he does merit, or he can merit, Hashem's protection. So why isn't he secure in that knowledge of protection, of Hashem's protection? It's very strange. So Chazal say that maybe he was worried that he had sinned, and if he had sinned, he would no longer merit Hashem's protection. The Ibn Ezra says, well, maybe the promise of protection was only for him, but maybe not necessarily for his family. And you see that his response here to his fear is to divide up the family. So maybe Hashem's promise of protection doesn't extend to every part of his family, and so he's worried about his family. A little bit strange. The Ramban rejects the Ibn Ezra. The Ramban says the reason why Yaakov was afraid, as we essentially pointed out, is that Esav doesn't respond, and instead he just approaches with 400 men. And the reason why he's afraid is because he's got 400 men bearing down on him. I think, without looking at the Ramban inside, I think what I would add to that, as the Abarbanel points out, is that being afraid isn't necessarily a lack of emunah. Right? Yaakov may have felt secure in Hashem's protection, but it's still a natural human response to feel afraid. And to perhaps not necessarily rely on a nace, rely on a miracle. And perhaps Hashem's protection would come, but only after much suffering. And that's what to be afraid of. The Abarbanel uses the mushal of a soldier going into battle, right? A soldier who goes into battle can feel a sense of fear, but overcome that fear and demonstrate courage. But the expectation is not that the soldier would not feel some element of fear. In fact, if the soldier felt no fear whatsoever, we might think that he's a little crazy. So that's the Ramban and the Abarbanel. But this year I saw something in the Chizkuni which really captured my attention, and I think helps us to answer both questions. What causes what is it that leads Esav to reconcile, and why is Yaakov afraid? And I've kind of already touched on this concept already, but the Chizkuni sharpens the point beautifully. The Chizkuni says, Banu el achicha el Esav v'lo hashivanu davar. Right? When the messengers come back and say, we went to we saw your brother, we gave him your message. So the Torah doesn't say this, but this is what the Chizkuni understands in what the messengers come back with. It said, the pasuk says, "Banu el achicha el Esav." We came to your brother, to Esav. V'gam holech likrascha v'arba mios ishimo, and he's coming to greet you with 400 men. So the Chizkuni says, what does it mean, Banu el achicha? What it means is v'lo heshivonu davar. He didn't say anything to us. We came up to him, we delivered your message, and he said nothing. Right? He said nothing. And not only that, right? Shahari Amar Ani Ba'atzmi Elech Elav Arba Meos Ish V'dibarti Mo Pe'el Peh, right? And I said to myself, maybe I'll go and I'll speak to him directly, but there are 400 men. V'dibarti Mo Pe'el Peh, and I spoke to him face to face. Ulefikach Vayira Yaakov Shel Haya Yodea Machshavaso Im Hi Latova Olara. And that's why Yaakov was afraid. Yaakov was afraid because he did not know what was in Esav's mind. And that to me, it's a very simple observation, but a very important one, because it's sometimes what can be most afraid, what can be most scary is not knowing one way or another. When I think of somebody who gets a certain test, to look for something, a scan, a blood test, or whatever, and they find something. The doctor finds something, but they don't know what it is yet. There's a unique fear of the unknown, of the uncertainty, right? When a person gets the results of the test, so then if it's bad news, God forbid, so they know like what the plan's going to be, and if it's good news, great. But that time before you find out the news, that time where there's so much uncertainty and things can go in any direction, that's a special, unique kind of fear. The fear of the unknown, the fear that emerges, the fear and anxiety that emerges from uncertainty. And the fact that Yaakov sends messengers to Esav and Esav says nothing, that's what truly causes Yaakov's fear. Again, he has Hashem's protection and he believes in Hashem's protection. That's for sure. But it's the fact that Esav says nothing that truly scares Yaakov, because he doesn't know. He doesn't know if he's coming belligerently or peacefully. And this may have been a fear in the back of Yaakov's mind, all along these past 20 years, but now he sent messengers. He sent messengers, lim sochein be'einecha, to find favor in your eyes. He sent messengers to appease, to make peace, to reach out to Esav. And so his overture is met with silence. So when his overture is met with silence, that causes a great deal of fear. And that fear continues, and then they reconcile. And to me, the fact that they reconcile, and I see the comment in the chat, and I'll get to it in a second, but the fact that they reconcile without any explanation, to me, I think Yaakov is still afraid, and Yaakov, the choice for Yaakov not to travel with Esav, obviously, can be understood very easily, but I think we can understand it better now that we know that the Torah doesn't give us a window into the mind of Esav at all. And so the fact that he does reconcile, my answer to that question is why? The answer to the question of why does Esav reconcile is we never know. And that's scary. Because yes, we know that he embraces Yaakov. Yes, we know he kisses him. But there is something still to be afraid of. There is still uncertainty. And, so many, the Medrash and so many commentaries look at this story of Yaakov and Esav as a paradigm for the conflict between the Jewish people and their enemies long into the future. It's even better if we see that this reconciliation is a reconciliation that still carries with it a high degree of uncertainty. And if there's uncertainty, then it's not really a true and full reconciliation. Yes, physically, active, through Esav's actions, it's an embrace, right? He embraces him, he kisses him, he cries. But ultimately, we don't know. We don't know what's beneath the surface. And that is very telling. And that is why we cannot take Esav's embrace wholeheartedly. We who represent Yaakov, we who are trying to understand Yaakov, we cannot take that embrace wholeheartedly, because there are no words around it. There's no language around it. There's nothing. Esav doesn't say, "I appreciate the gifts." I mean, he accepts them in the end, but again, he doesn't say like, "Okay, I reconcile because of these gifts," or "I reconcile because you convinced me." You didn't get the brachos. I believe you didn't really get the brachos. Or I appreciate you not acting like the Bechor. None of that. It's possible. It's certainly possible. But at the end of the day, the Torah makes it very clear that we don't know what's in Esav's heart. And if we don't know what's in Esav's heart, that's a reason to be wary and to be fearful. And that is why Yaakov and his descendants remain wary and fearful of Esav and his descendants forever, because of the belligerency, and because ultimately there was the reconciliation was never really sealed completely. So the question I got from Ruth, he is afraid for his family. Yitzchak's blessing, he says, was also frightening. Yet it shall be when you are grieved, you may cast off your yoke from your neck. Yaakov is prophetic. Will this be the moment that Esav will grieve and take revenge? Oh, excellent. Ruth, very good. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because what Ruth is referring to is the fact that when Esav asks Yitzchak for his own bracha, and Yitzchak says, well, I already gave your bracha away. So the bracha that he does give Esav reflects the fact that there will be conflict, that there will be times when Esav will dominate, and there will be times when Esav will be dominated. And so what Ruth suggests, and I agree wholeheartedly, is that it could be that Yaakov was wondering, is which moment is this going to be? Is this going to be a moment when I'm going to dominate, or is this a moment when Esav is going to dominate? Excellent point. Thank you so much, Ruth, for bringing that up. And Ruth also adds, this reconciliation was ultimately to be rectified by Mordechai, where he would not bow to Haman. So the fact that you mentioned that is so interesting, because this story again sets the stage for the eternal conflict between the Jewish people and their enemies. And so at different moments, the conflict is quote unquote resolved or addressed in different ways. Right? When the Jewish people are able to remain faithful to the Torah and to adhere to the values of the Torah, and Hashem is on their side, then they are able to overcome their enemies. And there are times in which that doesn't happen, and it's those times in which the people suffer terribly. So yes, when Mordechai doesn't bow down to Haman, that is an instance in which Mordechai overcomes this lack of complete reconciliation. The Chashmonaim, right? The Hanukkah is upon us, and the Chashmonaim in their battle, that was another instance in which they refused, they stood up, and they were again able to overcome this lack of full reconciliation. But this idea of the chizkuni, I think, is very powerful, because it honors the fact that we as people, the way Hashem designed us, we thrive better when there's a certain element of clarity, even if it's bad, right? Because if we know something bad is going to happen, or if we have a clear sense of something negative that's happening, so we can reckon with that. We can cope. We can find ways to cope with it. But if we don't know, if it's uncertain, that uncertainty has a certain angst to it, has a certain unique angst to it, because you don't know which way it's going to go, and it's hard to prepare when things are so uncertain. When I think about our lives right now during the pandemic, when I think about what we try to do, in shul and out of shul, and how to remain connected, the lack of certainty, the inability to predict of what things are going to look like, in a month or two from now, creates a certain lack of groundedness, and it creates a certain uncertainty and a certain anxiety over that. If we knew for sure how things would be, so we could plan a certain way, but if we're not sure, then it's a little bit more difficult. And I think a lot of people are experiencing the effects of this uncertainty of what things are going to be like, or how long is this going to continue for. Feeling a lack of control over our immediate surroundings, our immediate experience, feeling confined to our homes, not knowing when we'll be able to go out more. All of that uncertainty, it just aggravates all the different challenges that we're facing already. The uncertainty aggravates those challenges. If there's any inspiration we can take from Yaakov, it's that on the one hand, that sense of fear of the unknown and the uncertainty is honored by Yaakov, right? It's reflected by Yaakov. Yaakov felt the same way. And so if Yaakov can feel that way, then we should give ourselves permission to feel that way, to feel that sense of uncertainty, without necessarily feeling like we lack emunah. We have emunah. Emunah gives us strength, and it carries us through these difficult times. but we should be able to hold both the emunah and the anxiety over uncertainty at the same time. The other thing we learn from Yaakov is how he still forged ahead despite the uncertainty. The fact, he sees that Esav is approaching with 400 men, and so he continues to prepare. He continues to prepare, gifts and messengers, and he divides up his family. He prepares for the worst. He hopes for the best, plans for the worst, as they say. But and Yaakov, when it comes time for them to actually meet, Yaakov continues to move forward towards Esav. It's Yaakov who goes towards Esav and bows down 7 times. And then Esav runs to him, but it seems that Yaakov is approaching Esav. And so you see that Yaakov continues to forge ahead. And I think that's certainly a model, an example for us. The courage of Yaakov, we bear his name as the Bnei Yisrael because there is a special, particular inspiration or example that we are given through Yaakov. We are living out who Yaakov is as the Bnei Yisrael. We're living out who Yisrael is, and Yisrael is someone who confronts his challenges head on. That's what the name Yisrael means, Kisarisa, right? Because you fought, you confronted. And so that's the inspiration I believe that we take from Yaakov and from these stories. All right, thank you all for joining today. If you have any other questions, please feel free to unmute or to put in the chat. Otherwise, thank you for joining. Great to see you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Take care, Ellen.